Hey everyone, so I thought I would make actually an educational video on a couple topics for today. Um, Let me know your thoughts, any questions, comments, concerns, feelings about it. I want to hear about it. So, the first topic I wanted to talk about is the different phases that you might hear about in the Facebook group, cutting, maintenance, bulking. What's the difference? How do we go from one to the other? What does each one look like? What does each one serve? All of that. I'll go through that. The other topic I wanted to talk about was using tracking as a tool, and a little bit about how when we're not tracking what we want to be doing. So let's start out with the first one. Cutting is basically fat loss, dieting. The purpose of cutting is to just reduce body fat. And if you really prioritize maintaining your muscle mass and getting a little bit of that toned look, toned, by the way, is just another word for defined, muscular, and lean, then cutting, we are also trying to preserve our muscle mass while just really making most of our weight loss come from body fat. We cut, really, there's no timeline on it. It's just a matter of dieting down, staying in a deficit for long enough to reach the level of leanness that we personally prefer or want. There's no way to really predict how long that's going to take. Oftentimes, the whatever scale number we might have in mind, that, oh, I want to get back to this number, I want to get to this number because we might envision a certain leanness at that scale weight. Oftentimes, that number is not going to match what we're looking for with our physique and our leanness. So the best thing to do is continue to diet down despite the scale. Doesn't matter what the scale number says. Diet down until you feel and look the way that you want. It doesn't mean that you need to stay in a deficit nonstop from point A to point B, because if you have, 50 or 60 pounds to lose, that's going to take a long time, and you wouldn't want to stay in a deficit for, let's say a year and a half to 2 years. That would be exhausting. So, and regardless, you could have 15 or 20 pounds to lose. Either way, you don't have to stay in a deficit the entire time. You can, as long as you're not dealing with much fatigue or hunger, you can stay in a deficit. But sometimes it's nice to take a little bit of a diet break just for a week, bringing calories up to maintenance, still tracking, or you can just not track for a week, take a little bit of a diet break that way. Just kind of bring calories up, give the body a little bit of relief from the stressor of dieting, and mentally get a little bit of a break too. Oftentimes when we come back to resuming our cut, we're feeling a little bit refreshed mentally, physically, and it's like, okay, let's go time. Let's do another phase of fat loss. Going from fat loss, you could then go to maintenance. You could go into a surplus. If you go into maintenance, the idea is you're not necessarily going to maintain the lowest scale weight that you got to in your cut. The reason for that is when we're in a dieting phase, we're in a depleted state. We're not going to have as much glycogen in our muscles and our liver. We might be a little bit more dehydrated. We're not in a completely fed state. So the number on the scale is going to be the lowest at the end of our dieting phase. And then when we increase our calories by a few hundred to bring them back to really what's our predicted maintenance at that new point, we're going to see the scale pop up a little bit. It's really important to remember that that's not fat. When we bring calories up, protein is going to stay around the same. It might come down a little bit when we go into maintenance and we're giving our body enough energy to maintain weight. Our muscle is no longer at risk for being broken down and utilized for energy. So protein doesn't have to be as high as it was in a calorie deficit. So when we bring our calories up, when we go into maintenance, most of those calories are going to be coming from carbs. Some fat too, but with every gram of carb, there's 2 to 3 grams of water. And we're going to see that water retention reflecting on the scale. It's just water mass. You do want to keep that in mind. You're not, oh my God, I'm going into maintenance and I'm gaining all this weight. You're not gaining fat. If you are still tracking your macros and you're still within your calorie budget and we have you set at your new predicted maintenance calories, keep in mind it takes a little bit of time to find your actual maintenance. You're not going to be eating in a surplus. If you're exceeding that maintenance budget on a consistent basis, then yeah, you're probably gaining a little bit of weight. But if you're doing your due diligence to stay within that new macro budget, going from fat loss to maintenance should not scare you because you're not eating in a surplus. You're just eating at maintenance. And remember, if you're in maintenance and you're gaining steadily, if there's a trend upward, you're not at maintenance. You're eating in a surplus. So I know a lot of people are scared to go from fat loss to maintenance, but that fear isn't necessarily warranted, because if you're still staying within your budget and you're still doing the things that you did in fat loss, you're just working with a slightly higher budget now, you're not going to be gaining body fat. The idea of maintenance is to try to stay within a reasonable range on the scale, in measurements, pictures. You kind of want to stay in a reasonable range and continue self-monitoring. And self-monitoring can be in the form of weighing yourself daily or regularly. You can still be doing, measurements. You could still be taking pictures. Whether you're in coaching or not, it's good to stay practicing self-monitoring, because that way you'll stay kind of in the center of the spider web. That's what I call it. In maintenance, we're not trying to maintain the exact same number. That's not realistic. Our weight is going to fluctuate throughout the year. It's not realistic to be like, okay, I'm going to stay exactly this weight. But maybe a 5-pound range. If you can stay within about a 5-pound range for the course of a year, that's incredible maintenance. So the purpose of maintenance is to really try to maintain whatever our current physique is. If you are continuing to, or you're getting into a resistance training program focused on progressive overload while you're eating at maintenance calories, where energy in versus energy out is in balance, there's a chance that you could gain some muscle tissue, but not optimal amounts. If we go into just a little bit of a surplus, just 5 or 10% above our actual maintenance calories, that's enough of a surplus to gain optimal amounts of muscle gain over time, as long as we're engaging in progressive overload with that resistance training program. And I just lost my train of thought. Bloopers. So maintenance is not necessarily the best way to gain muscle, but we can gain some muscle in maintenance. I think the best thing about maintenance, though, is learning truly how to maintain the weight that you've actually lost. This is where most people tend to rebound. Weight loss can be easy, so to speak, because we're seeing that tangible evidence and proof that we're making progress. And it's a little bit mentally tough to go into maintenance and realize, oh my gosh, I need to continue to do the things that I did in order to get here without seeing tangible progress. Instead, we've shifted our focus now to feeling really prideful and really good about the fact that, oh my gosh, I'm maintaining this weight loss. That's really hard for a lot of people to do. It does take practice. I always advise that people spend a good amount of time in maintenance so that you can learn, what does maintenance look like for you? What do your meals and snacks kind of, what is the portion size that's going to really kind of work for you? That will allow you down the road to kind of let go of tracking and eat a little bit more intuitively, trying your best to keep those portions relatively the same. Hold yourself accountable if you start noticing that you're nibbling or grazing or doing any kind of emotional or stress eating, things like that, sliding back into maybe old patterns. You want to catch yourself right away. If you're engaged in the self-monitoring, like weighing yourself and everything, you'll start to see your weight tick up And if you notice that, that's okay because you're kind of in the center of the spider web, remember. It's not going to take much change in either direction to either go into a building phase or, take the tool of tracking back out and use it to kind of reel it in, dial it in a little bit, maybe go into a short mini cut just to kind of get back to your center of your spider web, which is maintenance. And you might practice maintenance for a year until you really start to understand what you can and can't get away with, so to speak. But it's absolutely worth staying in maintenance for a period of time for that reason. A bulking phase is, well, that's the purpose of that is to gain muscle. The scale will go up. It is nearly impossible to not gain any amount of body fat while you're gaining muscle. That's like every bodybuilder's dream. It's just not really possible. If we try to, geez, that sun is so bright. If we try to put on as much muscle as we can without gaining any body fat, we're probably going to be robbing ourselves of potential gains if we're taking too conservative of a surplus. If you're trying to gain as much muscle as you can in maintenance, it's really not optimal because you're not taking in a surplus of energy. Think about it this way. If you send a crew to a construction site to build a house, you want to give them the tools and the resources and the materials that they need to actually build something. If you're only giving them a few tools, like they might be able to build something, but it's not going to be optimal. So if we can give ourselves a good amount of a surplus of energy, then we're going to be able to optimize muscle growth, and there's going to be a little bit of spillover into body fat. That's okay because we don't have to be reckless or messy with our surplus and gain unnecessary amounts of body fat, but it is a temporary investment. You will gain a little bit of body fat, but you're also going to be gaining a good amount of muscle underneath that body fat. You won't really be able to see it during your bulk. That's okay. You'll see it later. The return on investment is huge because as you build more muscle onto your frame, your metabolism is going to increase. Your body is going to require more energy coming in order to maintain that muscle mass. So muscle is a very expensive tissue for the body to carry because muscle just burns a lot of calories even at rest. So building muscle and temporarily being okay with some body fat gain it can be hard mentally to do. But again, the return on investment is huge because after that building phase, when you go into a cut and you start shaving down your body fat again, you're probably going to be able to diet on higher calories than before. And as you get leaner and leaner, it's almost like one of those those like food vacuum packs. As you suck the air out more and more and it closes in on the object or the food that's in it, it creates more defined shapes. Same thing with going from, a building phase that you might spend 6 or more months in. Going from there into a cut, you'll be able to see at the end of that cut the actual difference in the muscle that you built. But it's tough because you're not going to see that. You have to just kind of trust the process. I know that sounds cliche, but it's very true. So this video is getting a little bit long. I'm actually going to cut this one off and I'm going to send another video on the tool of tracking because I do think that's important as well. All right. Where's my mouse? How do I stop this video? All right, hang in there.